Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Haku, Koneko and Rias. Part 3. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so without wasting any time, let's get into the video. The battle against Donaseek, Freed, and the other enemies could hardly even be called a true battle. Rias had been so pissed off by freaking everything that had been going wrong lately, and now to learn her Naruto was in danger because of the stupid fallen angel known as Rainer. It was just a bit too much for her. Shortly after entering the church, Rias didn't even wait for a sign to begin, nor did she wait for anyone to speak. Instead, she walked forward, calm as can be, until her enemies began to approach her. As soon as they did, she raised her hands to her sides and snarled out, "Beggin' pests. Nobody will ever hurt my Naruto-kun." And with that, she proceeded to unleash her immense power, a power referred to as the power of destruction upon the fools that had dared to encroach upon her territory. No, what happened could never be referred to as a battle. To imply such a thing would give the baddies too much credit. What took place in the rundown church could best be described as a massacre. Brutal, efficient, and deadly, these words described Rias and her power quite well. Not even Donaseek or Freed had escaped her wrath. The two of them were the last obstacles in her path, and she didn't even give them time to think, let alone flee to safety. No, Rias destroyed them. Blinking a couple of times in shock and a terrifying feeling of horror, Rainer looked at Rias, whose body was still emitting that same deadly aura as before. Holy funk. Note to self. Do not piss off Rias Gremory. Then again, if she tries to keep me from my darling Naruto-kun, we will have a fight on our hands. As if sensing eyes upon her, Rias turned around and smiled sweetly at Rainer and the others. "Is something the matter?" she asked pleasantly. Everyone quickly shook their heads. Rias-sama. Are you going to be okay?" Kiba asked cautiously. The beautiful Riti continued to smile as she turned her gaze to her knight. "I'm fine. Perfectly fine. Why? What could possibly be wrong with me?" Everyone decided to simply let the matter drop. They were too terrified of Rias in her current state to even try to broach the subject. However, after taking a moment to think on it, Akeno stepped closer to Rias and held her hands up, trying to show she wasn't a threat. Once she was close enough, she waited for Rias to calm down some before placing her hand on her master's shoulder. "Rias. Maybe we should try and talk to Naruto-kun. I think he deserves to hear the whole truth from us before the Hokage can poison his mind against us." Rias closed her eyes and did her best to calm herself. After a time, her power receded back into her body and she slowly reached up, clinging to Akeno's shirt. Burying her face in her queen's neck, the Redeed began to sob. I don't know if I can. He's already so angry with me." Her whole body was quivering at this point. "I don't want him to hate me. I never wanted him to hate me. I didn't think it would happen. I didn't think I'd fall in love with him. But I did. And now that he's so angry at me, it hurts. It really hurts. What if, by telling him the whole truth, he starts to really hate me? What if he doesn't want me in his life anymore? I can't do this, Akeno. I don't want to lose him." Akeno smiled sadly at her dearest friend and held her close, gently running her fingers through the Redeed's long tresses. "Rias, sometimes you just have to take a risk and hope for the best. If Naruto learns the truth from Hiruzen, then we'll probably lose him forever. You know how that man is. What he's like. Now that things are the way they are, and Naruto-kun has started down a spiral of anger and hatred, distrust and paranoia." Sighing, she closed her eyes and rested her chin atop her friend's head. "It's the perfect time for Hiruzen to swoop in and deal the finishing blow. If we don't tell him first, Hiruzen will twist the truth around and then Naruto will really hate you. We can't let that happen." Rias flinched and clung tighter to Akeno's shirt. Taking some time to think everything over, she looked up into her friend's eyes and asked, "Should we go tell him now?" I don't know if I can. But I don't want to lose him because of that wretched man. Please, take me to him." Akeno nodded and smiled kindly at her king before petting her hair gently. "Sure, Rias." Looking to the others, the Sadamasichus smiled at them pleasantly and said, "We're going to pay a visit to Naruto-kun. Please come with us. You all deserve to hear the truth as well. I just hope this doesn't blow up in our faces." Kiba simply smiled and said, "Of course. I think he should be home by now, don't you think? Let us pay him a visit, then." Rainer and her friends, Middleton and Calawerner, frowned for a moment before they nodded in agreement. "I want to see how Asia's doing as well, so we'll come with you. But if you upset Naruto-kun more and cause him more stress, we'll be having words." Rias looked calmly into the woman's eyes and said, "What I have to tell him will hurt, but he deserves to hear the truth from me and not that old bastard. I can't guarantee how Naruto-kun will take it, but it's pretty much guaranteed that he'll be upset. More than he already is." The fallen angel frowned for a time, but eventually nodded her head in acceptance. "Very well. All we can do is be there for him and help him through this whole process." "Thank you. let us be off. Rias said before she used her sleeves to wipe her eyes free of the tears. Naruto-kun, I'm coming. Please, please don't hate me for this. Naruto's home. When Naruto and his friends entered his home, he and Koneko quickly took notice that Kushina wasn't home. Frowning in thought for a moment, Naruto soon brought his fist down against the palm of his other hand and smiled. She did say she needed to shop for groceries. Guess we'll be seeing her a little later, then. Turning back to Asia and Koneko, he smiled kindly at them before inviting them inside. Taking seats upon the various pieces of furniture, Naruto smiled at Asia and said, well Asia-chan, this is our home. You'll always be safe here and I'm going to do my best to make sure you stay happy as well. I'd offer you some cookies or something, but I don't think we have any food just yet, let alone tasty snacks like those. The blonde healer smiled at her new friend and said, that's alright. Thank you for thinking of me, at least. I'm very grateful to you, Naruto-kun. You've been far kinder to me than anyone I can remember. I've had more fun with you than I've ever had before. You've made me happy today. I can't help but wonder if this is what it's like to have a brother. To have family. Naruto wrapped an arm around Asia and hugged her closer to him. Well, if you want me to be your honorary big brother, then I'll be glad to accept that role. I'll be the best big brother you could have ever asked for. Giggling a bit, Asia nestled against her new friend and closed her eyes. Thank you, Naruto-kun. I think I'm just going to rest here for a little while. Naruto chuckled a bit, but before he could say anything, he heard Asia's soft breathing, signifying that she had fallen asleep while leaning against him. As her breath brushed against his neck, Naruto felt a pleasant tingle throughout his body. Blushing, he did his best to calm his nerves, but with every breath, he'd feel that feeling more and more. It was getting to be a bit too much stimulation. Suddenly, the door opened and in walked Kushina, carrying with her numerous bags. Looking at her, he was about to offer to help her, but she shook her head at him. It's okay. Koneko can help me. You just stay right there. Don't want to wake your new friend now, do you? The blonde simply smiled in thanks and watched as Koneko went to assist the bishop. He watched them for a short time before he returned his attention to his sleeping companion. Gently squeezing her arm to show his support, he brought her closer against him and said quietly, nobody will ever hurt you again, Asia-chan. Let your new brother deal with everything. After a period of silence between everyone, Naruto was caught off guard when Kushina began to speak from her place in the kitchen. Naruto-kun, you should know that Rias went with your new friend, Rainer, to deal with the threat. They'll have everything taken care of shortly, I'm sure. Seeing her son nod, signifying that he understood, Kushina soon entered the room and sat down in one of the free chairs. Looking into his eyes, she said, I'm sure you suspected it as well, but I believe Akeno knows more than she's letting on. She and Rias are likely hiding even more from all of us. I don't know what it could be, but… Before either of them could say any more, a chime sounded throughout the house. Sighing to herself, Kushina stood up and opened the front door to see who could be disturbing them. Eyes widening slightly at what she saw, she soon narrowed them and stepped out of the house. Approaching the gate that barred entrance into her home, she asked, what are you doing here, Rias? The busty crimson-haired woman frowned and asked, can we please come in, Kushina? There's something important we need to discuss and it involves Naruto-kun. Frowning at her, Kushina was ready to snap at the woman. However, rather than blow up at her king, she asked, can this wait? I think Naruto-kun has been through way more than enough today. He needs his rest. Rias shook her head and said, it's best if we get this out of the way now. Before Hiruzen can act to make things even worse than they already are. I wouldn't put it past him to pull something soon. So please, let us in so we can talk. Kushina scowled for a time before she eventually grumbled irritably to herself and allowed Rias and the group with her into her home. Sealing the gate shut once the last of them had come in, she activated the seals once more and followed them into the house. Seeing the look her son was giving her, Kushina sighed heavily and said, sorry, Naruto-kun, but I think this is important. Let's hear her out before we do something we might regret. Frowning deeper, Naruto was about to say something when he felt Asia's hand gently tugging at his shirt. Glancing down into her eyes, he frowned in confusion and opened his mouth to ask a question. However, she spoke up before he could. Please, hear her out. I don't know what's happened between you, but you shouldn't carry around such hatred and anger in your heart. That's easier said than done, Asia-chan. But alright, I'll hear her out. Looking into Ria's eyes at this point, he asked, what did you need, Rias? Rias flinched at the lack of the chan suffix, but decided not to dwell on it. Closing her eyes, she took a deep breath in and released it slowly. She repeated this a few more times, obviously trying to calm her nerves so she could speak clearly. Naruto-kun, it's really important that you hear this. You deserve to know the whole truth and not whatever BS Hiruzen will try to feed you. If I don't come out and tell you this now, then Hiruzen will most assuredly approach you and tell you his version of things. Rias began. Naruto-kun, I've always known you were special. Ever since you were born, I had my eye on you. Something about you intrigued me. It wasn't the fact that you housed the Kyuubi, nor was it your connection to your parents. Heck, it wasn't even your sacred gear that caught my attention. There was just something that drew me to you. I can't really put it into words. Sorry. Anyways, fast forward a ways and we come to the meeting with Hiruzen. When he revealed that Minato had foolishly left notes about us, he tried to blackmail me into doing his bidding. However, while I agreed to work for him, there was a stipulation that I put forth in exchange. Rias explained. Naruto frowned at this point and asked, I'm not going to like this, am I? Iridide shook her head. No, but it needs to be said. It was a dangerous ploy, but I convinced Hiruzen to allow me to bring you into my peerage. I wanted you to be a part of my family. I sensed greatness in you, and I didn't want to risk losing you. Sighing sadly, she couldn't even look him in the eyes anymore. Naruto-kun, I made him promise that he'd put you in a situation where you couldn't refuse me. I would revive you as a member of my peerage and make use of you to deal with my delicate situation. I knew you would likely be killed on a mission outside of the village, which would give me the perfect opportunity to revive you as part of my family. The spiky-haired blonde clenched his fists tightly as anger boiled inside of him. Before he could lash out at the conniving witch, Asia squeezed his hand tight, getting his attention. SHHH. Just listen. I think she has more to say. Taking a few deep calming breaths, Naruto glared into Ria's eyes and said, what else? The crimson-haired beauty looked into his eyes with a hint of a blush on her cheeks. Naruto-kun, while originally I just wanted to use you to get me out of a bad situation, I hadn't calculated something that happened as I watched you grow. Raising a brow, Naruto asked, and what would that be? Naruto-kun peering deep into his eyes, Ria smiled slightly and said, I slowly found myself falling in love with you. You may be a lot younger than me, but love knows no bounds and all that. After a time, I just couldn't use you. I just wanted you to be happy and I wanted to be close to you. I just wanted to be your friend and maybe something more later down the road. I didn't even care anymore if I got you in my peerage or not. All I wanted was to be with you. Naruto's eyes were wide for a time, but after a while he closed his eyes and said, and you couldn't tell me any of this before? Why exactly? I was afraid. I was so afraid you'd hate me. I couldn't bear to have you mad at me. I love you, Naruto-kun. I well and truly love you. Just the thought of hurting you, of losing you, it hurt so much. Then. Naruto nodded in understanding and said, Kushina was finally ready to meet me and you struck a new deal with the Hokage. Correct? Ria scowled and said, yes. When I approached him about Kushina, declaring that I'd be introducing Kushina to you, he decided to take his blackmail a bit further. Somehow he had obtained a contract with Riser Phoenix. All he had to do was make use of the seal given to him and he could have summoned Riser right then and there. It was either do as Hiruzen commanded of us, in this case hiding your mother from you, or he would call Riser then and there. I didn't have a choice. I wasn't ready to face Riser back then. I was too afraid to make a move against him yet. Kushina scowled and said, the more I hear about that evil son of a bitch, the more I want to kill him. Ikeno nodded in agreement. The third is corrupt and has let his position of power go to his head. If I could get away with killing him, I would. Naruto frowned at this and, after taking some time to think on it, he looked into Ria's eyes and asked, what if he's already met Riser? If the Hokage is as corrupt as you say he is, then wouldn't he have already been in contact with Riser? They could be waiting for the right opportunity to strike. Everyone's eyes widened at the implication of what Naruto had just said. After coming to her own realization, Rias clenched her fists tight and said, you're absolutely right. I wouldn't put it past that bastard to pull something like that. If they've made a deal, then anything could happen. Naruto-kun, I want you to be very careful from now on. There's no telling what could happen if they're in contact with one another. I wouldn't put it past Riser to attack you at some point just to prove a point to me. So please, be safe. Okay. Nodding once, Naruto decided to just come out and say it. Rias-chan, I'm sorry. I didn't even stop to think about all the possibilities, nor did I think about how you felt or anything. I should have waited until I had the full truth before I did anything. Sighing heavily, he gently squeezed Asia's hand for support and said, I'll be honest with you. I'm still upset with you, but I can't entirely blame you. Despite everything, I do care about you. I don't want to hate you or be angry at you or anything, really. You're one of my dearest friends and I never wanted to hurt you in any way. Still, I was pissed off. I still am. But I can't place all the blame on you. Not after hearing all of this. Asia smiled at her brother figure and asked, so will you forgive her? Naruto sighed again and said, yeah. I guess I will. But, looking hard into Ria's eyes, he said, don't betray my trust again. And be honest with me from now on. No more lies. No more hiding things from me. I want you to trust in me, just as I'll trust in you. Rias couldn't help herself as she began to cry again. Nodding her head rapidly, she said, I'll never hurt you again. I swear it. Just please, please don't leave me. I'd die without you in my life. I couldn't bear it if I lost you. Blushing at her words, Naruto glanced away and scratched at the tip of his nose. That's a little much, but thank you. Akeno giggled to herself and said, we'll all be alright. The Hokage won't tear us apart. Now, why don't you introduce us to the cute little thing next to you? She seems so sweet. Asia meeped and clung to her brother figure. Chuckling at this, Naruto said, I'm sure you already know who she is, but this is Asia Argento. I've kind of adopted her as my little sister. Smirking at Asia, he nudged her gently in the side to get her attention back on him. Asia-chan, let me introduce you to my family and friends. And with that, he took the time to introduce each of his peerage members and Rainer. When it came time to introduce Middleton Calwerner, he blinked and said, I actually have no idea who they are. Rainer-chan. Rainer smiled at him before motioning towards her friends. Meet Middleton Calwerner. They're two of my dearest friends. I'm glad that you finally get to meet them. I hope you all get along splendidly. Naruto smiled at them and said, it's a pleasure to meet you both. Just out of curiosity, do you three have anywhere to live? If you don't, you might as well move in here with us. You're more than welcome to if you have nowhere else to go. Middle smirked as she nudged Rainer. Oh, he's a keeper. You're just the sweetest thing, aren't you, Naruto-kun? No, we don't have any place to live. We were only sent to be observers for the time being. Rainer, though, has been living here for years now, also she could watch over you. Calwerner and I, on the other hand, only arrived here recently. The blue-haired fallen angel smirked and said, we'd be glad to move in with you. But we first need to report into Azazel-sama. He needs to know what's happened here, after all. Then, if he permits it, we'll be glad to return and live here with you. Rias sighed and hung her head for a moment. Damn it. More competition. Ashina, noticing this, giggled for a moment before saying, as fun as this all is, I think it's time we all went home and got some sleep. It's late and we're all exhausted. Middled Calwerner, go and meet with your leader. Then, if he permits it, you can return here. I'll get you keyed into the seal so you can come and go as you please. And Naruto-kun. Once she had his attention, the Redeed smiled sweetly at him and said, please don't act on any of your potential impulses. I don't want to be made a grandmother too soon. Naruto stared in a complete deadpan at Kushina. I'm more controlled than that. Besides, it's not really your place to tell me if I can be intimate with my loved ones or not. The Redeed shook her head and said, relax. I was only teasing. There's silencing seals throughout the house, so please make use of those if you're going to do that with somebody. Inside, though, she couldn't help but frown sadly. He was serious. I guess I really can't play the worried mother card anymore. I've lost that chance. Sighing softly to himself, Naruto soon stood up and looked at Asia. Come on Asia-chan, let's get a room picked out for you. I think you like it here. I'm sure I will, too. He said with a chuckle. As if suddenly realizing something, Akeno shot up and said, wait. Naruto-kun, we need to take you and Haku to get your familiars. Will tomorrow night work for you? Naruto blinked for a moment as he looked between Akeno and Haku, who had been rather silent this entire time. Sure. What do you think, Haku-chan? Haku smiled and said, that sounds lovely to me. I'm eager to meet whomever I end up with. I get the feeling a fox might be perfect for you though, Naruto-kun. Chuckling softly at the teasing, Naruto said, we'll just have to wait and see. Now, if there's nothing else, I'd very much like to go and get some sleep. I'm exhausted. Rias smiled sweetly at him and said, that's everything, Naruto-kun. Sleep well, okay? Thanks, Rias-chan. Good night. Naruto said before he walked off with Asia to pick out their rooms. Once they were out of sight, Kushina looked into Ria's eyes and said, I'm still upset with you, but I understand your position. I don't like you planning to manipulate Naruto-kun like that, but I'll forgive you, just as my son has. Just don't go betraying our trust again. Rias nodded and said, of course, Kushina. But. The Uzumaki shook her head and said, we need to do something about Hiruzen, I know. Unfortunately, killing him won't solve our problems. If we act hastily, without thinking this through, somebody even worse might take over, and we'd have even worse shit to deal with. We need to find some way to locate Tsunade and convince her to return to Konoha to take the mantle of 5th Hokage. Rias nodded in agreement. If we can't locate her in time, Jiraiya might take over, and that would just be another damn problem. He might be even worse than Hiruzen. Shuddering, Akeno said, I can only imagine what he'd do if he were in charge. No thank you. As they talked, not one of them had noticed Koneko sneaking out of the room. Well, not everyone. Smirking to herself, Rainer thought, I should have thought of that first. Oh well. Enjoy cuddling up with Naruto-kun while you can, Koneko. Soon enough it'll be me at his side. Turning her attention back to the discussion taking place, Rainer asked, if we're so worried about Jiraiya, couldn't we just, kill him and be done with it? Kushina turned to Rainer and shook her head. Unfortunately, Jiraiya is important to the village. He works as Konoha's spy master and has built up an impressive network of information gathering. Killing him would only cripple Konoha in the long run. We don't want that. Rainer shrugged. You make a good point. Still, if he tries anything, we'll just have to get creative. At that comment, the women began to chuckle evilly. Meanwhile, Kiba just smiled awkwardly beside Gasper, who could only watch the proceedings with wide eyes. Just grin and bear it. Women are terrifying. Kiba said to his companion. Gasper slowly nodded but didn't utter a word. The next day. Naruto wanted to scowl at the man sitting before him, but decided to keep a neutral expression on his face so as not to alarm his guest. Sitting before him on one of his chairs was Hiruzen Sarutobi. He had that same grandfatherly expression on his face that he always had, but now that Naruto knew the truth, he could barely stomach looking at the man, let alone his damned smile. What do you need, Hokage-sama? Naruto-kun, there's a few reasons I came here today. The first reason is because I wanted to personally escort you to the hospital so you can undergo the transplant. After all, you are taking Sasuke's Sharingan, are you not? Hiruzen said kindly. Naruto blinked and said, I kinda forgot about that. With all that happened yesterday. Hiruzen nodded and said, it's understandable, Naruto-kun. You've been through a lot lately, far too much than someone your age should have to deal with. Which is why this second topic is so hard to discuss. It's bound to only compound your reasons for being upset with myself and Rias. But, you deserve to hear the truth from me. So, here it is. Naruto inwardly sighed and listened as Hiruzen began to speak. I'm about to hear a lot of bullshit. I wish I had Koneko with me right now. Naruto-kun, on the night of your birth, I knew you were special. You were meant to do great things. However, shortly after I retook the mantle of Hokage, Rias Gremory approached me. She insisted that you be given to her to be resurrected as one of her pieces. Your whole life, she's been trying to manipulate you in an attempt to get you on her side. I do not know the full reason behind her desire to have you, nor do I understand her circumstances. However, I tried to argue on your behalf. However, she revealed to me that she had Kushina in her clutches and threatened to keep her from you if I didn't let you have her. We all know how that turned out in the end. Hiruzen said, releasing a soft sigh afterwards. Man, it almost sounds like he believes this bullshit. If he wasn't such an asshole, I'd recommend he take up a career in acting. He'd make a killing. Naruto thought to himself. After a time, Naruto shook his head and said, I kind of figured something like that was going on behind the scenes. I'm just so done with it all. I just want to be left alone. Can we just go and get this transplant done so I can rest and relax for a while? I think I've been under way too much stress lately. Hiruzen frowned at the apparent lack of interest Naruto had shown, but chalked it up to him just being exhausted from the events of yesterday. Hell, it was true that Naruto had been through way too much in such a short period of time. Heck, he died. That'd be enough to stress somebody out for sure. Shaking those thoughts from his head, Hiruzen rose to his feet and left with Naruto, journeying with him to the hospital. If it helps any, Naruto-kun, I am on your side. I'm sorry all of this has happened to you. Thanks, Hokage-sama. I don't know if I could ever forgive you, but I understand. Now let's hurry. I'm just so tired. I want to get all of this over and done with, Naruto said. Looking at Naruto's face, Hiruzen did notice some small bags under his eyes. He really does look exhausted. Maybe I should just let him rest after this. Shrugging it off, Hiruzen led Naruto inside and to the correct room where the transplant would be taking place. Do be careful with him. Of course, Hokage-sama. The surgeon said. Naruto-kun, we're going to put you under for the time being. When you wake up, you'll likely be groggy for a while. You're going to have to wear a cloth around your eyes for a while before you can use your new eyes. Okay. Naruto looked into the surgeon's eyes and said, sure. Some actual sleep sounds wonderful right now. The surgeon chuckled before he nodded to one of his assistants. Putting the IV in the blonde's arm, she soon set everything up before watching as Naruto's eyes began to close. Nodding to the surgeon, she said, give it a few minutes and he should be out like a light. Thank you Shirley. Alright everyone, this is a delicate procedure and I won't accept mistakes from any of you. Hokage-sama, I would like you to step out of the room, please. We'll inform you when the transplant is successful. The surgeon said. Hiruzen frowned momentarily before he nodded his head in acquiescence. Very well. Take good care of him doctor. He said before leaving the room. Might as well go back to work. TCH, dealing with all the damn paperwork is such a bother. I wish I could just burn the whole damn pile and be done with it all. Later that afternoon. Naruto groaned as he slowly came to. At first, he was confused as well as feeling groggy. Letting out a loud yawn, he stretched and tried to open his eyes, only to see black. Frowning, he tried to remember what the hell had happened while he was out. Then it all came rushing back to him. That's right. I've got the bastard Sharingan now. Can't help but wonder how long I'll have to leave this blindfold on. Oh good, you're up. A voice that he recognized from earlier said. You're awake earlier than I expected. I suppose that's only natural, however. How do you feel? Naruto frowned for a moment before he said, my eyes feel really itchy. I know I shouldn't, but I really wish I could scratch at them for a bit. The surgeon chuckled and said, that's only natural. Give it some time. We're going to release you into the custody of Kushina Uzumaki, okay? She'll watch over you and help you out. I want you to return to see me in a week from today. I'll remove the blindfold then, and we'll see how well you've acclimated to your new eyes. Okay. Naruto nodded and said, alright. Thanks Doc. Of course. Do you have any questions before I bring Kushina-sen in to see you? Naruto frowned and tried to think over anything he might need to know. After a while, he just shrugged and said, I can't think of anything. But, if something starts to feel off, I should probably come back and see you right away, huh? The surgeon nodded, though Naruto couldn't see him do so. Yes. If you feel that something is wrong, I want you to come see me right away. I'll do whatever I can to help you with the healing process. Thanks. I'm ready for Kushina now. Before you go, do I have any clothes somewhere around here? I'm feeling a little, breezy. The surgeon chuckled softly and handed Naruto his clothes. Helping him out of bed, the surgeon allowed the blonde to lean against him for the time being until he could find his center of balance again. Once he was sure Naruto was ready, he watched calmly as the teen dressed himself. Once he was sure that everything was fine, he said, Kushina-sen will be in just a moment. Take care Naruto. Frowning to himself, Naruto said, damn eyes itch so bad. Can't rub at them, though. Can't make things worse. Ugh. They itch so much. Giggling could be heard as Kushina entered the room. I'm sorry Naruto-kun. I shouldn't laugh, but you really do make for an interesting sight right now. I know your eyes itch right now, but you'll be okay, I promise. Would you like to go out and get a bite to eat? You've been cooped up in the hospital all day. Naruto chuckled softly and said, that sounds wonderful. Thank you. Are any of the others with you? Kushina nodded and said, yes. Koneko and Rias have been waiting here for you. The others would be here as well, but they're quite busy today, it would seem. Haku is currently trying to get acclimated into the village still. She's been assigned to Team 7 as Sasuke's replacement. I'm sure she and Sakura are looking forward to when you recover. Especially little Sakura. She teased. Naruto chuckled softly and said, thanks. Of course. Here. Kushina took Naruto's hand in hers and began to lead him out of the room. Once they were in the hallway, she greeted Koneko and Rias. Rias, Koneko, would you like to get some dinner with the two of us? Rias smiled brightly and said, I'd love to. Koneko simply smiled and nodded her head. Seeing this caused Kushina to giggle a bit before she turned and began guiding Naruto along once more. As they walked, the Rede decided to ask her son, where would you like to eat? Raiminichiraku. Perhaps Yakiniku-Q. You know, some barbecue does sound rather good right now. Naruto admitted. After a moment, he asked, Koneko-chan, Rias-chan, how does that sound to you? Yum. Koneko said in her usual monotone voice. Hearing this caused Naruto to chuckle a bit, figuring she was down for the idea. Rias giggled a bit and said, that sounds lovely, Naruto-kun. Do you mind if I, hold your hand while we walk? Naruto frowned for a moment as he thought it over. After a time, he held out his hand for Rias to take. When she did, he gave it a gentle squeeze to reassure her that he didn't hate her. Blushing, Rias smiled contentedly to herself and intertwined her fingers with his. Leaning in close, she pressed her lips to his cheek and said, I really do love you, Naruto-kun. More than you could ever know. Naruto blushed and said, I know. And thank you. I don't know yet how I feel about you. I've forgiven you, but I don't want to just rush into anything, okay? Of course. I won't try to rush you or anything, I promise. I'm happy just to be near to you. My wonderful Naruto-kun. Rias said, sounding awfully love-struck. Naruto chuckled softly, but didn't say another word. She really is something special, isn't she? Still, she hid my mother from me and tried to manipulate things behind the scenes, same as the old bastard. Sighing softly, he soon just lost himself to his thoughts. Koneko watched all of this with a frown on her face, but didn't say anything. In her mind, Rias deserved to spend some quality time with their destined one. Because that is what he was to them. Their destined one. The one they were always meant to be with, no matter what. Don't hurt him again, Rias-sama. I won't hesitate to hurt you if you hurt my Naru again. Outside. Rias and the girls frowned as they spotted the various citizens of Konoha looked at Naruto. These weren't friendly expressions. No, they looked like predators planning for their next meal. When they began to whisper amongst themselves, the four of them frowned at what they heard. They're going to try something, just watch. Kushina said. Rias scowled at this and said, until Naruto-kun's ready to remove the blindfold, we need to always travel in groups. We can't let them believe they can hurt our Naruto-kun. Let's go. Koneko said before she began to tug on Naruto's shirt. With the two Ritids nodding in agreement, they led Naruto through the village, though the looks didn't stop. Now that Naruto was essentially blind for the time being, they seemed to believe he was easy pickings now. Not one of them knew yet that he no longer housed the Kyuubi. No, in all their infinite wisdom, they still believed he was the Kyuubi no Yoko. A while later, they finally arrived at Yakiniku-Q and stepped inside. Thankfully, the people here were friendly and didn't have any intention of harming Naruto in any way. However, as they peered outside, they saw that a large group of people had followed them and were now simply waiting. Scowling at this, Kushina said, Rias, we need to contact the others. For the time being, we're stuck here until we can get some more help. Think you could get in touch with the others? Rias nodded and said, of course. Give me a moment. While Rias worked on getting in contact with their fellow peerage members, Kushina looked outside again with a nasty scowl on her face. Koneko. Are you ready to fight if need be? The white-haired beauty nodded. Yes. As much as I hate the man, should we try to get in contact with the Hokage? He might be able to help. Kushina shook her head and said, I'd rather not bet on that horse if I can help it. We can't trust him, and there's no telling what he'd do if he learned about this. Chances are, he knew this kind of thing would happen and neglected to set up countermeasures against such a thing. Koneko frowned and said, damn. Naruto scowled as he clenched his fists tight. Before he could say anything, however, the waitress stepped up to them with a smile and asked what they'd like to drink. After taking their drink orders, she asked if they were ready to order, but her answer was a swift not yet. Nodding her head in understanding, the waitress left them to their own devices once again. I wish I could help in some way. But right now, I'm practically useless to all of you. I don't know what I could possibly do to help in this situation. Naruto admitted frustratedly. Kushina placed a gentle hand upon his shoulder and said, it's fine Naruto-kun. We'll deal with them. When we're done here, we'll start taking you back home where it's safe. Just leave the fighting to us if it comes down to that. Okay. Naruto nodded his head somewhat reluctantly. Of course. Sorry for being such a burden right now. Kushina lightly flicked his forehead, eliciting a small ow. From her son. You aren't a burden. You're a valued member of our family. We'll always keep you safe. Thanks. Naruto said. Rias looked at her friends and said, Kiba and the others will be here soon. I've informed them of the situation and they're none too pleased. If these people pushed their luck, there's going to be a lot of dead citizens. I hope the Hokage is ready to deal with that kind of fallout. Kushina nodded and said, good to hear. For now, why don't we figure out what we want to eat, Unless the others will be joining us. Rias smiled and shook her head. They said to go ahead and order for them. Now, do you know what you'd like, Naruto-kun? Naruto let a small smile form on his face as he gave his response. However, inside he was quite upset by this whole situation. I wouldn't be at all surprised if that old bastard planned for this to happen. I may be blind for the time being, but that doesn't mean I can't still fight. This might even be good training to hone my other senses. I've neglected that for a while, so it might be worth a shot. Later. After the rest of Ria's peerage had arrived and joined them in their feast, the group paid for their meal and proceeded to leave the restaurant. There was a much larger group of people now, each of them just waiting for the opportunity to pounce and kill their prey. Kushina frowned deeply as she hurriedly guided Naruto along. The peerage members were in a circle around the two of them, making sure to keep close just to ensure no stray attacks of any kind could reach him. However, their luck wasn't meant to last. Soon enough, they became surrounded on all sides, and they were left huddling close together, still keeping Naruto tucked away from harm. Be good little boys and girls and step aside. Now's the perfect chance for us to get rid of this blight on our village's great history. After all, the idiot's gone and crippled himself. There's never been a better time than this to deal with him. The apparent leader of the group exclaimed somewhat maniacally. Before anyone could say or do anything more, they all heard the sound of barking dogs. This was shortly followed by a voice saying, yer yer. What do we have here, Looks like we've got a lot of little ones misbehaving. Do let my friends through, would you please? Looking up towards the voice, they were a bit surprised to see the legendary Kakashi Hatake sitting atop a nearby rooftop, a serious glint in his eye. In a matter of seconds, the mob was surrounded by Kakashi's dog summons. However, this wasn't their only problem. Looking around, they could see a large number of people, each of them shinobi of varying strengths. What? Kakashi simply smiled at the mob and said, you see, when I saw a mob forming, I decided to investigate. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised that you were all after little Naruto-kun over there. Still, to think you'd be willing to attack a shinobi of Konoha. For shame, people. For shame. Smirking behind his mask, he said, so, I decided to recruit a small army of my own. If you insist on attacking a shinobi when you're mere civilians, we're going to have quite the problem on our hands. It would be well within our right to fight back. And if some of you were to die, well, so be it. So, here's what's going to happen. Making sure he had their attention, Kakashi clapped his hands together once and said, with a large grin behind his mask, you're all going to go home and think about your pathetic lives. I want you to keep something important in mind as you contemplate the meaning of your worthless lives. Naruto Uzumaki is not the Kyuubi and never has been, never will be. Besides that, he's never harmed any of you. Naruto-kun is a well-behaved young man that has only ever wanted to be a productive member of our fair society. I think that's fair, don't you? When the leader of the mob looked about ready to speak up, Kakashi disappeared from sight. Blinking a few times, he opened his mouth to speak before he suddenly froze. A kunai was pressing against his throat just enough to draw blood. Remaining perfectly still, the man glanced to his left, staring into the Jonin's lone eye. I didn't give you permission to speak, little man. I want you all to make me a promise. Promise me that you'll leave Naruto-kun and his loved ones alone from now on or we can start killing all of you. Believe me, I have absolutely no problem killing each and every last one of you. It might be cathartic, in a way. Shrugging his shoulders, Kakashi smiled again and said, still, I'd rather not have to go through the hassle of explaining everything to the Hokage. Too much work. So, can we all call it a day and get a move on? Or should my friends and I start killing you? I'm cool either way. The various members of the mob looked around at all the shinobi surrounding them. There were even some summon animals in the mix, which did not help steel their nerves. Slowly, they turned into a quivering mess and chose to run away screaming. Those that remained behind were either rooted in place by fear or they were too stupid to realize they were utterly funked. Then, of course, there was the leader, who still had a kunai pressing against his neck. Seeing that a good chunk of villagers chose to remain, despite the rather clear warning to run away, Kakashi simply shrugged again and said, well, looks like you all get a free ticket to hell. Enjoy. The cycloptic Jonin said before he slit the man's throat. It didn't take long for the others to decimate the remainder of the mob. Seeing that they were done, Kakashi smiled again and walked up to Rias and her peerage. I'm glad to see you're all okay. Everything's going to be just fine now, I assure you. Rias breathed a sigh of relief and shook Kakashi's hand. Thank you, Kakashi-san. If you hadn't come when you did. The silver-haired man simply waved it off before stepping past her. Reaching up, he gently patted Naruto atop the head and said, I expect to see you bright and early tomorrow morning, Naruto-kun. You may be unable to see for the time being, but that's no reason to slack off. I'm going to help build up your other senses so you never have to feel weak like this again. Besides, I figured you wouldn't want to just sit around the house all day doing nothing. Isn't that right? Naruto chuckled softly and said, thank you, Kakashi-sensei. I'm looking forward to it. Good. Now, let's get you home. Hopefully they get the message now that you're off limits. Should they ever attempt something like this again, well, Kakashi said, leaving the sentence hanging at that. Naruto chuckled again and said, yeah. Thanks again. No problem, Naruto-kun. We're going to have such a fun week. By the time you can use your eyes again, you're going to just love me. I'm sure of it. Kakashi said, a wicked grin hidden behind his mask. Naruto felt a cold shiver shoot down his spine, but he pushed the nervous feeling aside and said, good. I don't want you holding back just because I can't see anything. No worries there. Kakashi said before ruffling his student's hair. As they journeyed back towards the Uzumaki compound where Naruto and his mother now lived, Rias couldn't help but clutch at her chest, where her heart was located. I thought we were in trouble for a while there. Thank you so much, Kakashi. We really owe you. Rias agreed with what Kakashi decided, though. And she'd be right there to help him train Naruto and Haku. After all, they still needed to get the hang of casting magic and getting the hang of teleporting to and from separate locations. So while Kakashi would train them in the arts of the shinobi, she trained them in all things magical and fill their heads with as much knowledge as she possibly could. I promise, you'll be more than ready for the upcoming Chunin exams, my darling Naruto-kun. You'll become a Chunin for sure once they see what all you can do. Little did they know that the Chunin exams were going to be an absolute hell for each of them in one way or another. In the back of her mind, Rias couldn't help but worry that something was going to go horribly wrong during the exams, though she'd pushed that thought aside for the time being. No sense in worrying about what may come. Instead, she let her mind wander to the familiars her new pieces might get. Frowning after a moment, she thought, I guess we'll have to put that off for the time being. I forgot Naruto was getting the eye transplant today. Damn it. With a shrug of her shoulders, she figured there wouldn't be any point in rushing. They had all the time in the world, after all. Ow. Naruto said as he walked into yet another solid object. This one actually felt like a tree. Oddly enough, it was a welcome change from the usual training dummy or obstacle he kept walking into. It was the following day after the villagers were successfully cowed by Kakashi and his allies. As promised, Kakashi had come to collect Naruto early in the morning, not even 4 AM yet. It turned out that he had collected both Haku and Sakura as well, considering Haku had been added to their team in place of Sasuke. Honestly, they felt it was a welcome change, especially considering the fact that Sasuke was always such an insufferable asshole at the best of times. Besides, who would want to work with someone that would so willingly sacrifice and/or kill their allies? They certainly didn't. Oddly enough, for Naruto and his loved ones, at least, Kakashi had expressed his concerns about the Hokage and his odd behavior. The silver-haired Jonin warned Naruto to be careful of the Hokage and vowed to do whatever he could to protect the teenager from harm, even at the Hokage's hands. Something about the third Hokage was rubbing him the wrong way, and Kakashi always trusted his instincts. Shaking those thoughts off, Naruto decided he would focus on the here and now. Despite the fact that he was currently blind, the blonde knew that he had enough situational awareness to avoid the worst obstacles, even if he couldn't see them. So why, then, was he having so much trouble? Kakashi, in all his infinite wisdom and sadistic humor, had inserted earplugs into his students' ears, cutting off his hearing as well. He apparently felt that, instead of working on his hearing, they'd work on his remaining senses first. Though, Naruto got the feeling that Kakashi was finding the whole situation a tad too hilarious. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Naruto focused on his remaining senses. Come on. If you can't see or hear, then feel for something else. Maybe if I use my mana, I can work through this somehow. Worth a shot, I suppose. Shrugging, Naruto decided to just go with his new idea and see if he could make it work somehow. Feeling for his mana, Naruto soon began to release small pulses of mana from his body, almost as if he was trying to mimic a bat skill of echolocation. When he began to feel the pulses bouncing back towards him, he began to get a picture for the surrounding landscape. After a time, he felt like he had a good sense of where everything was, including just how far off the obstacle course he had wandered. So, turning around, he walked back over to the obstacles and released some more small pulses, waiting a moment to ensure he got a good picture of what to expect. When the spiky-haired blonde started making his way carefully through the obstacle course, Rias smirked to herself and said, "That's it, Naruto-kun. Very good job." Kakashi chuckled and said, "I see he's using some of that mana you told me about. It feels different from chakra, but at the same time." The crimson-haired devil nodded and said, "They are fundamentally similar, yes. Naruto-kun has far more mana in him than normal people do. It's just as vast as his chakra pool. Powerful, but without form. Without purpose. Until he can master control over his chakra and his mana, he'll expend far more than what is needed for the task at hand. Just trying to make use of this sonar-like ability he's employing, he's expending far too much mana. We're just lucky he hasn't managed to accidentally topple any trees or destroy the obstacle course with all the mana he's expending. Control is something we're going to need to work on while we have the time." Kakashi nodded in understanding. "Of course. Right now, my goal is to get him used to using his other senses, rather than trying to rely on sight to get him places. I would really rather he not get into situations like the one yesterday ever again. However, I would like to start him on control exercises once he has passed this particular test. Do you think you could get him to use that blast of mana you told me about before?" Rias frowned and thought for a time before saying, "Maybe. I'm not sure if he's even consciously aware of how he fired a concentrated blast of mana like that. We'll just have to see if we can get him to use it again." Yes, Rias had confided in Kakashi all about what she and Naruto were, all about the wonders of mana and magic, the various races and species, etc. Kakashi had proven himself to be a true ally, and she knew that he could be trusted with their secrets. So far, he had not let her down, and she knew that he would not betray their trust in him, which she was more than thankful for. When Naruto got knocked flat by a swinging arm obstacle, Rias winced in sympathy for him and said, "Ouch. Poor Naruto-kun." Kakashi chuckled softly and said, "His sonar ability seems to be helping, but he still has a ways to go if he wants to perfect such a useful ability. Poor Naruto, indeed." As Naruto pushed himself back up onto his feet, he shook his head free of the cobwebs before taking a deep calming breath. "Okay, so that didn't work. Stationary objects are obviously no problem, but moving ones will still kick my ass. Definitely going to need to work on that. So, let's try this again. You can do this, Naruto. If you don't master this exercise, you're never going to be able to defend yourself against those bigots." Sadly, try as he might, Naruto continued to have trouble with the moving obstacles. Oh, he had perseverance and stubbornness on his side, but trying to work your way blindly through an obstacle course the way he was just wasn't working for him. Eventually, after narrowly making it about 90% of the way through the course, Naruto took a nasty blow to the gut and was sent crashing to the ground below. Thanking the rook inside of him for the boosted defense damage resistance, Naruto simply rolled over onto his back and muttered, "Damn it," to himself a few times. When he felt someone's fingers tapping him on his left side, he reached up and removed the earplugs. "Hello." Rias smiled down at him, even though he couldn't see it. "You did very well, Naruto-kun. I was very impressed. I'm sorry you couldn't make it all the way to the end, but you really did do very, very well." Before Naruto could say anything in response, Kakashi said, "You made it pretty far for this being your first time through something like this. That trick you used was clever, but you'll need to refine it until it's battle ready, so to speak. Right now, you're still a sitting duck out there, just waiting for someone to get the better of you. But we'll continue to work on that." But right now, helping Naruto to his feet, Kakashi placed his hands on the blonde's shoulder and turned him towards some trees. "I want you to point straight ahead and try to do what you did in the Land of Waves. I heard you used some kind of concentrated blast of pure mana to hurt Sasuke. I want you to try and do it again. Just do whatever comes naturally to you. And remember to point straight ahead while you do this." Naruto was puzzled by Kakashi's insistence to fire one of his magic bullets in that specific direction, but he decided against questioning it. Instead, he pointed his finger straight ahead and began to focus on trying to get a grasp on his mana. At first, there were simple sparks shooting from his fingertip, but after getting the hang of it, he formed a large ball at the end of his finger. Grinning slightly, he released it straight ahead in one powerful concentrated burst. "You did it?" Naruto said excitedly. Rias and Kakashi didn't exactly share Naruto's sense of excitement. They just continued to stare as a large, very large trench was cut through the ground and still going. When it eventually hit the third's face on the Hokage monument, they both sweat dropped. Once the mana dissipated finally, the duo stared blankly at what they were seeing. The third Hokage's face was just gone. There was no trace of it left. On top of that, pieces of what was once the third's nose rained down on the village below. Sure hope nobody was crushed by those. Kakashi thought as another sweat drop formed. Rias, meanwhile, found herself giggling at the sheer panic they could all hear coming from the village. Naruto-kun. You supercharged your attack and left a trail of destruction in your wake. You're lucky your attack was angled upwards, otherwise a lot of people could have just been killed. You even did a little remodeling of the Hokage monument. They're probably going to try and repair that later, but it's bound to take years before they fix that damage." "Wait. I did what the hell was I supposed to be aiming at?" Naruto questioned in a panic. "I thought I was just firing a small bullet or something. Not whatever the hell I just did." Kakashi chuckled and said, "I was honestly hoping you would hit our guest and force them out of hiding. I wasn't expecting you to completely remodel the Hokage monument. Though, without the third's face up there, it does look better." "Huh." Off in the distance, they could hear the Hokage shouting about the damage that had been done to his face and who was responsible for such a thing. They didn't focus on that, though. No, somebody else had their full attention now. "You could have killed me. Just what the hell were you thinking, aiming that at me?" Before Naruto could say anything in reply, Rias placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered in his ear, "It's your godfather. Jiraiya of the Sannin. Be careful not to say too much." Kakashi stepped in front of his student and stared coldly into Jiraiya's eyes. "I do not take kindly to people trying to spy on me, let alone those I cherish. We expected privacy while here. Why, then, did you feel it important to use your technique to spy on us? Is there some reason for you to be here, Jiraiya?" Jiraiya scowled at Kakashi for a time before turning his gaze on Naruto. "I heard some rumors and received some interesting reports from my sources. I needed to investigate. I didn't expect to find my godson blind and shooting magic bullets willy-nilly. Besides, this is deviating from the plan." Naruto frowned distastefully and asked, "What plan? What else do you and that old bastard want from me?" Jiraiya turned his scowl on Naruto and said, "Don't call him that. As for the plan, it's none of your business. But, if you must know, you were supposed to keep the Kyuubi and harness its power. I was going to train you in the proper usage of that beast's power. More than that, I'm afraid you don't need to know. But, I've heard that you supposedly died on your last mission and lost the Kyuubi. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Rias reached down and took one of Naruto's hands into hers. "If you want to blame anyone for what happened, then direct your blame on Sasuke, Uchiha, or even the villagers that were responsible for Naruto's neglect and Sasuke's inflated ego. Hell, blame the Hokage if you want. Besides, where do you get off saying the things you are? Does all of this anger have to do with that screwed up prophecy you were told?" Naruto frowned in thought for a time before saying, "A prophecy? Those are to be taken with a grain of salt. Do you realize how many prophecies have turned out to be nothing more than hogwash? After a moment, it clicked in his head and he looked in Jiraiya's general direction. This prophecy has something to do with you. Something that would bring you glory. It has to be something big, something you could brag about. And, considering you apparently wanted to use me to further such goals. Rias and Kakashi's eyes widened before they narrowed their gaze at Jiraiya. So that's why you were so obsessed with molding the perfect apprentice to suit your needs. Let me guess. World peace. It has to be something really big like that, something that would practically guarantee you would have women practically throwing themselves at you. But it's not a direct result of your actions, is it? Somebody else is involved, and once they're successful, you could ride on their coattails and bask in their glory. Kakashi surmised. Before Jiraiya could say anything in response, Naruto spoke up again. You can't just manipulate a prophecy to suit your needs and desires. If they're meant to happen, then they'll happen. Let me guess, you tried the same tactic with my father. Was he aware of this prophecy of yours? Was he willing to go along with your plan? Or did he shoot you down? Because I have no interest in participating in your plan, Jiraiya. I won't let you manipulate me like that old bastard has been all my life. The Toad Sage clenched his fists angrily, glaring heatedly at the three of them. Taking a few deep breaths, he looked straight at Naruto and said, you don't know anything, Uzumaki. Yes, I was told a prophecy, and yes I wanted to see it come to fruition, but that doesn't give any of you the right to mock me and badmouth sensei. So what if you've suffered a little? Before Jiraiya could say anything more, Naruto interrupted him once again. Suffered a little? Let me guess. Part of your plan was to ensure I was too stupid to realize what kind of pompous jackass you are, right? I've been beaten, scorned, bullied, and even killed by the people of this village. You and the third wanted me to be so desperate for any kind of positive reaction that I'd gladly jump at the chance to learn everything I could from you. I'm right, aren't I? This prophecy, it involves you training the person who will bring peace, doesn't it? Tell me something, Jiraiya. How many students have you trained so far that you told would be the child of prophecy? I was just the next one on your list to try and manipulate, wasn't I? Just how many times have you tried this same old ploy of yours? I reiterate. You don't know anything. Jiraiya bellowed angrily. If you must know, sensei and I came up with this plan together. He listened to me when I told him about the prophecy. He believes in me and knows I have what it takes to be really great. But, you're right. Sensei funked up the plan. He made deals with these devils, and the plan was shot to hell. But Kakashi and Rias easily saw the maniacal gleam in Jiraiya's eyes at this point. The plan can still be salvaged. So what if you don't house the Kyuubi anymore? You have access to powers nobody else does. Massive chakra and mana reserves. One of those sacred gear things. You can still become powerful enough to save this wretched world. And I'll teach you everything you could ever need to know. Sensei may have made a mistake, but I won't. So, what do you say, Uzumaki? Ready to learn under the best there is? Rias held Naruto protectively against her and looked into Jiraiya's eyes as calmly as she could. Jiraiya, you need to leave. You're not in your right mind. Maybe once you've calmed down, you can try this again. You're scaring us. Out of the corner of his eyes, Kakashi saw Rias and Naruto taking cautious steps backwards. They're getting ready to run. I don't blame them. He thought to himself silently. Returning his gaze to Jiraiya, he said, she's right, Jiraiya. You're not well. Go see Inoichi and talk to him. I'm sure he can help you. Maybe, once you're better, you can talk to Naruto then. Okay. The large sage looked between them for a moment before turning his gaze back onto Naruto. Seeing the frightened look on his face, Jiraiya smirked a bit but still nodded his head to signify he understood. I'll leave. For now, at least. I'll be back, though. I'm not giving up on you, Naruto Uzumaki. I'm not giving up on the prophecy. And with that, he turned and walked off, a sinister grin on his face. If that attack of his is anything to go on, then Uzumaki is going to be a true force to be reckoned with once he has the proper training under his belt. I may not know jack about mana, but his chakra. Oh that I can work with. So, little devil, teach him all the tricks that you know. Once he's ready, I'll mold him into the perfect tool. I won't give up. As soon as Jiraiya was out of sight and out of their hair, the three of them breathed a simultaneous sigh of relief. Looking at Uruk, Rias asked, are you alright, Naruto-kun? You looked frightened for a while there. Kakashi chuckled dryly and said, he wasn't the only one. I think we all were terrified for a moment there. Naruto nodded once and said, that was definitely scary. Who knew he was so deranged? Seems to me that he's desperate for positive attention. Like he wants to earn Hiruzen's approval, no matter what it takes. But Kakashi nodded in response. There's definitely more to it than just that. I think you were right when you said he just wants all the glory. He's meant to train the child of prophecy or something along those lines. The problem is, who exactly told him this prophecy? Prophecies are intentionally kept vague for a reason. You're really not supposed to put so much stock into a prophecy as they aren't set in stone. Things can change, and prophecies have a funny way of changing as well. It's like the butterfly effect that you hear about when discussing time travel. Even the slightest of alterations can cause a serious ripple in the timeline, causing any number of things to happen. Only, in this case, the fact that you died was never meant to factor into the prophecy Jiraiya was told about. The problem we're faced with now is the fact that he doesn't seem to understand that concept. He's obviously been obsessing over this prophecy for a long time now, and the third Hokage has only exacerbated the problem. He's been adding more fuel to the fire, and it's been left on for far too long. In other words, not good. Very not good, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto said. Jiraiya was the class clown that always felt inferior to someone like I felt compared to Sasuke. Am I right? Rias nodded and said, you're correct. And, like you, he was placed on a team with that person. Orochimaru of the Sannin. And, to make things worse, Hiruzen favored Orochimaru over Jiraiya. He was always proudest of that wretched snake. He felt such a powerful bond with that scum that he even let Orochimaru escape instead of killing him when he had the chance. Actually blinking a couple of times, Rias ended up facepalming herself and said, Kushina probably knows way more about the situation than I do. She's been trying to gather information on all the goings on in the world. I'm sure that she's probably got a ton of information on Orochimaru and his dealings by now. I can guarantee right now that Orochimaru will make a move sometime in the near future. He's obsessed with a few goals in particular. Immortality, knowledge, and power. And trust me, he is not the kind of person you want to give any of those things. In other words, the third Hokage funked up big time, and now it's up to other people to clean up another of his messes. Peachy. Naruto said, bringing his hand to his face. As if we didn't have enough to deal with already. Between the three of them, Tsunade seems like the least funked up of the bunch. Not to say she doesn't have her own set of problems, considering what I've been told about her. Still, might be a good idea to look into getting her back here to Konoha as soon as possible. We could use an ally like her. Rias frowned slightly and shook her head. You're right. But it won't be that easy. Let's do what we can together before we try anything with Tsunade. Sounds like a plan to me. Kakashi said. Now. Before Kakashi could say anything more, they heard the third Hokage coming closer, if his angry ranting was anything to go on. Did you do this, Naruto? Why would you cause such blatant destruction of the monument? What were you even thinking? Sorry, Hokage-sama. We were trying to help Naruto familiarize himself with using his other senses to get around. I decided to try and test his capabilities with his new abilities by having him aim at that target over there. Something distracted us, and Naruto lost control of his powers for a moment. It was a complete accident, I assure you. But, if you need to punish someone, let it be me. I'm the one who came up with the idea to test his powers when he can't see anything at the moment. Kakashi said, trying to ease the Hokage's boiling temper. Naruto chuckled nervously and rubbed the back of his head. My bad, Hokage-sama. I was told to try something small, but I kind of overcharged my technique. I had no idea I could do something like that. I'll try some control exercises and try to get it all under control. I'm really sorry. Hiruzen scowled for a time before releasing an exhausted sigh. That blasted thing is going to take forever to fix. But, I suppose you aren't to blame for a training accident. Just ugh. Promise me that you'll focus on controlling your abilities before you attempt to do something like this again. Sure thing, Hokage-sama. Honest mistake, I swear. Once I can use my eyes again, I should have a much easier time. Right now, I'm pretty much running blind. Naruto said. So you are. Hiruzen said, sounding genuinely exhausted. It's fine. I'll get some people to work on it immediately. You three should take a break and get something to eat. It's almost lunchtime and you'll want food in your bellies if you want to resume training. And, without waiting for a reply, the Hokage turned and walked away. Left alone, Rias let out a breath before saying, hopefully that's the last interruption for a while. He is right, though. We should go get something to eat. Would you like to come with us, Kakashi? Kakashi's initial response was to say sure, but then he got an amusing idea in his head. Shaking his head, he said, no, I'd just be a third wheel. Go on and enjoy your date. Have fun, kiddos. And with that, he walked away with a smile on his face. Rias blushed slightly before looking at Naruto. He was just teasing. You don't have to. Naruto sighed and said, it's fine. I know how you feel about me, Rias-chan. I'm still upset with you for what you did, but I also know that I care for you a lot. I don't want to stay mad at you forever. I want to get over it and be happy with each other again. So, if you want to treat this as a date, then I'll play along. But if I'm uncomfortable with something you're doing or saying, I reserve the right to tell you so. So please, try to take it easy, okay? Let's start slow. The crimson-haired devil smiled at him and took one of his hands in hers. Thank you, Naruto-kun. I know I let you down. I know I hurt you. And I'm truly sorry for doing it. But, thank you for being such a wonderful person. I know I should have said it sooner, but I really do love you. I can't imagine my life anymore without you in it. I'm just so glad to have met you. I'm happy just being near you. Naruto sighed softly again and said, it's okay, Rias-chan. I understand. I really do. I care about you. I always have and I know that I always will. I don't like being mad at you. I do feel bad for treating you and the others the way I did when I first learned Kushina was alive and you kept her from me. I promised you that nothing would change between us and ruin our relationship. And I broke my promise. So, I'm sorry. I should have waited to hear the truth. The full truth. But I didn't. I flew off the handle and I ran from my problems instead of facing them as I should have. I should have believed in you and kept my word to you. I think that's part of what has me so frustrated. I couldn't keep my promise to you and it hurts. I'm mad at myself for not trusting you. For turning on you and betraying you like I did. I'm truly sorry. Rias frowned sadly at him and began to struggle to find the words she needed to say to her beloved Rook. After a moment of silence passed between them, she finally came to a decision. Placing her hands on his shoulders, she turned him to face her. Then, without a word, she pressed her lips to his, giving him her first kiss. Naruto was stunned into silence as his king kissed him. At first, he wanted to back away and say something in response, but he quickly squashed that part of him down. Instead, he wrapped his arms around Rias and began to respond in kind to her affections. When they parted, he smiled at her and said, thank you, Rias-chan. The busty crimson-haired lady giggled cutely and asked, thank me for what? I'm the one that hurt you. I should be the one thanking you for giving me another chance. Naruto chuckled softly and said, let's just agree that we both needed to thank each other and forgive each other at the same time. If you're still willing to be with me after I hurt you, and if I'm still willing to be with you after you hurt me, then I say we're perfect together. What do you think? Rias giggled and said, that sounds fine to me, Naruto-kun. Now come along, let's go get something to eat. Then, why don't we return to my abode and cuddle for a time? I don't want our time together to come to an end too shortly, after all. Smiling at Rias, he wrapped her in a hug and said, I love you, too, Rias-chan. Don't ever doubt that. Feeling tears welling up in her eyes, the beauty quickly wiped them away before giving her beloved one more kiss. Once they were done pouring their hearts out to one another, they linked hands again before making their way towards the village proper once again. Nobody will ever come between us again. You have my word on that, Naruto-kun. Later that night, Uzumaki household. So, you're all in my house, why exactly? Kushina questioned her fellow peerage members. Looking around at the various members of Rias' peerage, she honestly wasn't sure how to feel about some of them anymore. Sure, some of them were okay in her book, but that didn't change the fact that they helped their master, or king, as Rias was called, in hurting her precious baby boy. Hell, Kushina was still upset that they had dared to play on her little boy's desire to keep a promise, just to get out of some arranged marriage with some prick. Taking a deep breath to regain her mental faculties and to quell the burning rage she felt inside herself, Kushina looked at her son and asked, are you sure you're comfortable having all of them here right now, Naruto-kun? Naruto offered his mother a smile and said, it's fine. Are Rainer and the others here too? We're here, Naruto-kun. Rainer said. I wish I could be closer to you, though. Naruto chuckled softly and said, sorry Ray-chan. Maybe next time. Reaching up his hand, he began to gently pet Koneko's hair. She had made sure to sit on his lap and nestle herself back against him the very moment he sat down. Meanwhile, on his left sat Asia and on his right, holding his hand, was Akeno. Sorry about this, Kushina. But we were hoping to hear what you've learned about Orochimaru of the Sannin. What can we expect from him? Will he be making any moves anytime soon? Rias questioned her bishop. Dancing another glance at her son, Kushina frowned slightly before turning her gaze back onto Rias. From what I've seen, Orochimaru is starting to make movements throughout the elemental nations. He was a member of the Akatsuki for a time, but after making an attempt on Itachi's life, or whatever it was he was attempting to do, the snake was forced to go into hiding. Naruto frowned in confusion for a time before asking, why make an attempt on Itachi's life like that, though? That doesn't make sense if his goal is for immortality. And when the answer dropped on his head like a ton of bricks, he said, the Sharingan. Orochimaru wants the blasted Sharingan. And because he couldn't get Itachi. Kushina nodded along and said, Sasuke was his next target. However, Sasuke no longer possesses the Sharingan. You have what Orochimaru wants. Naruto stopped petting Koneko for a moment as a look of horror came to his face. Quickly shaking it off, he resumed petting his girlfriend's hair and said, well, that's just peachy. It's likely that he already knows what's happened and has worked his plans around a bit to account for the sudden change. But it would make sense for him to go after Sasuke as well. Sasuke has the ability to pass down the Uchiha bloodline, whereas I'm just a temporary Sharingan wielder. I won't live for eyes widening in realization, he said. Oh shit. Kushina nodded and said, Orochimaru wants to live forever. I don't know if he's been made aware of the various factions and if he knows about the long lives of we devils or the other mythological creatures or not. So, because you were seemingly revived from the dead by some unknown means, he might feel that you hold the true secret to immortality within you. Orochimaru has been cheating death by use of his curse seals and jumping from one body to the next every 3 years. He likes to take the best genes and the best people to serve as his host bodies. It's not a perfect solution, but it works for him. I think he originally intended to take Itachi's body as his own, but when that backfired on him, he decided that Sasuke would be his next target. After all, Sasuke is younger and, most importantly, weaker than Itachi. It would be easier to take over Sasuke's body rather than try for Itachi again. Naruto-kun, Orochimaru will target you to get what he wants. But at the same time, I'm almost certain that he'll try to extract Sasuke from the village as well. If he can force Sasuke to breed him some new willing hosts, each with their own glorious pair of Sharingan eyes, he'd be a happy man. Again, not a perfect solution, but it would serve Orochimaru's needs well enough. Kushina said. He plans to strike during the upcoming Chunin exams that are being held here in Konohagakure. Rias frowned and said, that's not good. It's almost certain he'll target Naruto-kun in the Forest of Death if they're holding the second stage there again. They almost certainly will, too. And we already know Hiruzen won't listen if we try to advise him otherwise. No, we'll have to enact some kind of countermeasures to deal with Orochimaru should he go after Naruto-kun and his teammates. It would be terrible if he inflicted one of those curse seals of his on poor Naruto-kun. Naruto let out a frustrated sigh and said, great. Just great. Taking a moment to just breathe while continuing to make his shorter girlfriend happy with the head petting, Naruto soon said, at the same time, Hiruzen is likely making plans of his own that revolve around the Chunin exams as well. I'm 99% sure that the Hokage has been in contact with Riser Phoenix. After what Rainer-chan told me about the rating games between devils, I'm certain that Riser will come to you and challenge you to a rating game to decide your fate. Looking in Ria's direction, he continued, knowing the professor as well as I do, he'll have instructed Riser to hold the rating game at the same time as the final matches of the Chunin exams. Hiruzen will be trying to force Haku-chan and me into participating in those matches, so we won't be there to help you against Riser in the rating game. I think he already tried to plant the seeds of distrust in me yesterday morning, before he took me to get the transplant done. He tried to spin things in a way that would paint you in a bad light, Rias-chan. He tried to convince me that you had twisted his arm and were simply trying to manipulate me all this time. It was all a bunch of bullshit, but it was obvious what he was after. He wanted to ensure that at least I wouldn't be there to help you in your fight with Riser. He wouldn't have done that if he wasn't certain that Riser was coming to collect you. That tells me that he and Riser are working together to ensure they both get what they want. Naruto explained. Rias and the others scowled at this piece of news. Damn it. That's a problem we really don't need. But looking at Kushina at this point, she asked, there's more you aren't telling us about Orochimaru and his dealings. What has he been up to, exactly? Kushina frowned and said, well, not like we needed more oil for the fire, but Orochimaru has been in contact with Konoha's ally. Sunagakure. I'm not sure if you were aware, but Hiruzen and Danzo were conspiring together to weaken Suna. They convinced the Wind Daimyo to start delivering the best missions to Konoha instead of providing the funding needed to keep Suna afloat. Orochimaru is playing on that problem and using it to his advantage. So, Orochimaru's new village of Itagakure and Sunagakure have allied together and will be staging an invasion of Konoha during the day of the final matches of the Chunin exams. Rainer frowned at this and said, that's not good. Orochimaru is a snake in pretty much every sense of the word. There's no way to trust someone like that. Chances are that, as soon as he has what he wants, Orochimaru will kill Rasa, the fourth Kazekage. In fact, it might have already happened. There might be no way for us to stop this invasion from happening. Kushina, what's their trump card? Looking into the Fallen's eyes, the Redeed said, Gaara is their trump card. He's Rasa's youngest child and he houses the Ichibi. However, thanks to some shoddy Fuinjutsu work, Gaara is mentally unstable and doesn't listen to reason. He thinks that the only way to prove his existence is to kill everyone else. He'll obey and behave for a time, but if he's allowed to unleash that beast on Konoha. What are the odds that Jiraiya has learned of Orochimaru's plan? Naruto asked. Kushina frowned slightly and shook her head. Not high. Jiraiya may be this village's spymaster, but he doesn't have access to the same kinds of sources I do. Besides, he'd much rather sate his vices than do his job properly. I think the most he'll be able to tell Hiruzen is that Orochimaru is on the move and will be striking Konoha during the Chunin exams. I don't know if Jiraiya knows more than that or not. Rias frowned as well as she brought a hand to her chin. Tracing her fingers along her jawline, she thought over all the information that had been presented thus far. So, we can't rely on Jiraiya or Hiruzen to put effective countermeasures into place unless something drastic happens earlier in the exams. At best, they know Orochimaru is on the move and that's it. They probably won't even have access to the full details on the invasion plan and won't have any way to counter Orochimaru until it's too late. At best, Jiraiya would be on the lookout for some giant snakes with no clue about the real threat. Orochimaru will likely be trying to kill the third Hokage during that time, as well. Gaara would be left unchecked, free to go on a rampage throughout the village. Unless we do something and set up some countermeasures of our own. Since Haku-chan and I will be helping you against Riser Phoenix, couldn't we recruit Sona-chan and her peerage? Naruto questioned. They're powerful and smart enough to be able to deal with somebody like Gaara. Heck, if they work together, like I know they can and will, Gaara probably wouldn't stand a chance. Before Rias could say anything in response, Kushina's eyes widened and she exclaimed, "That's brilliant. Gaara is known for his control over sand. The Ichibi is a giant tanuki-like monster made of sand. Sona wields powerful water magic." Ria's eyes widened and she said, "The Ichibi's greatest advantage can also be turned into its greatest weakness. But its massive size would pose a problem, even for Sona. At best, she might be able to limit its mobility, but she couldn't stop a tailed beast ball aimed at Konoha if it came down to that. Oh, if only Minato were still alive, we could have made use of his flying thunder god technique. Then we'll just have to help her," Calwarna said, getting everyone's attention. When they all looked her way, the buxom brunette looked at them all seriously and said, "If you lot can convince the Citri heiress to cooperate with us when it's time to fight that thing, then the three of us can help her defeat that thing. Her peerage will be needed to set up a barrier to contain the fighting, leaving Sona and her queen to fight that thing on their own, more than likely. The two of them cannot handle the Ichibi on their own. So let us help her." Rias frowned sadly at them and said, "You'll be putting yourselves in a great amount of danger if you try to fight that beast. Are you sure the three of you can handle it?" Middle placed a hand to her chest and said, "Don't you worry about us. With the five of us fighting that thing together, we can put a stop to it before it can hurt anyone. Heck, we'll put the fear of God into that thing. It'll never want to cause chaos of any kind ever again." Before anyone could say anything else, Naruto spoke up, catching everyone's attention. "Let them try. I believe in them. Like they said, if they work together, it'll all work out." But looking in his mother's direction, Naruto asked, "With his seal as unstable as it is there something in particular we should be concerned about?" Kushina nodded and said, "We can't let him fall asleep. He hasn't permitted himself to sleep much in his life. When he sleeps, the Ichibi can get free to run amok while Gaara rests. So, if it's at all possible, you five will need to defeat him, but not knock him unconscious. If he uses that feigning sleep technique, your best bet is to wake him up as soon as possible. So, just make sure Gaara is too beaten and broken to get up and fight anymore. I'll leave a shadow clone with you that will make some modifications to his seal, but it's up to you five to break him down. Do you understand? That could be tricky. But we can pull it off. Citri will be our trump card against Gaara and the Ichibi, just as Gaara was meant to serve as Orochimaru's trump card against Konoha. You lot just need to focus on freeing Rias from her arranged marriage with that turkey," Rainer said before staring straight into Ria's eyes. "Make damn sure you all win that fight. I don't want to have to go break up a wedding if I don't have to." Kushina smirked and said, "Oh, don't worry about that. Riser won't know what hit him once we're through with him." Rainer smirked back and said, "Good. I'm looking forward to hearing the good news. And Naruto-kun." Seeing she had his attention, she said, "Make sure you give Riser and Ria's dad a good smack for me, would you, sweetie?" Naruto chuckled softly and said, "Oh, I plan on it. Riser is going to learn real fast why you don't funk with Rias-chan's peerage. As for her dad, I've got a few choice words I'd like to say to him, too. Don't worry, they'll both get the message loud and clear." "Good," Rainer said. Rias couldn't help the smile that crept its way up onto her face. "I have such a wonderful family and a great circle of friends. Riser. Dad. I will get out of this unwelcome marriage contract with their help. For once, I can see the light of hope at the end of that tunnel and not some black void of nothingness that I thought awaited me. And if I have my way, I'll be marrying Naruto instead. Oh, I can't wait." So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.